Trump. Now, look, I would be careful about passing around this thing on Facebook that's going around that my sister had sent me about Donald Trump and Anthony Kennedy's son, who just very coincidentally has a close relationship with Donald Trump because he was the one who signed off on a lot of his loans at Deutsche Bank. I think there's stuff there to look into, and there are people who are calling for maybe some investigations on just how this process went down with Anthony Kennedy. But I wouldn't get out ahead of yourself. The real issue for the time being is that Donald Trump is going to appoint someone to the Supreme Court who is going to change the tenor of the Supreme Court for decades to come. And not the least of which is going to be a woman's right to choose. They may not directly overturn Roe v. Wade. People I'm starting to talk to say they don't need to do that. They can simply allow multiple different ways for states to abridge a woman's right to choose, to effectively outlaw it, but not having to address Roe v. Wade head on. Not to mention that this guy, Brett Kavanaugh, who's first in line, supposedly at the top of the list, a former Kennedy clerk, after his experience working on Ken Starr's investigation, where they actually ended up getting Bill Clinton impeached because during a deposition, he lied about whether or not he had sex with Monica Lewinsky. He's now come to the conclusion that this is probably too much of a burden on a president. Well, here is Donald Trump talking about Roe v. Wade and his next Supreme Court pick.
Which means he had confidence in me to do the right thing.
Are you going to ask your nominees beforehand how they might vote on Roe versus Wade?
Well, that's a big one, and probably not. They're all saying, don't do that, you don't do that, you shouldn't do that, but I'm putting conservative people on. And I'm very proud of Neil Gorsuch. He has been outstanding. His opinions are, is so well written, so brilliant.
Pause it. Now, obviously, Donald Trump has not read a single word of those. In fact, it was reported over the weekend that Donald Trump wants his nominee to have extensive writing on legal issues. He's not interested in reading them. He just literally wants to see that they exist because that's what's important. Yeah, I don't need the mucky muck gobbledygook. But if it's written and typewritten and it's
published a lot of stuff,
that's good.
Lots.
I even learned a few words.
Standing, his opinions are, is so well written, so brilliant. And I'm going to try and do something like that, but I don't think I'm going to be so specific in the questions I'll be answering. And I'm actually told that I shouldn't be.
Because on the campaign trail, you said you would leave it to the states.
Well, maybe someday it will be to the states. You never know how that's going to turn out. That's a very complex question. The Roe v. Wade is probably the one that people are talking about in terms of having an effect. But we'll see what happens.
Pause it. Did you follow how little of an understanding he had about he was able to say the words Roe v. Wade and the words states, and that people are still trying to figure out how that has an effect.
It's very complex, okay?
He doesn't understand the concept of you have federal law supersedes, the Constitution supersedes law.
Well, a lot of people are talking about that whole principle as well.
That's right.
There's complex. A lot of conversations going on about a lot of things involving federal and state laws. Things that are coming back, things that are going, but we're talking about it, and maybe I shouldn't say more.
Totally coming back.
Wade is probably the one that people are talking about in terms of having an effect, but we'll see what happens. But it could very well end up with states.
Yeah, there it is. Yes, it could very well end up with states.
Tune in to see what happens.
Yeah, as we mentioned the other day, Jeffrey Toobin predicted that abortion will be outlawed within 18 months in about half the states in the country, maybe a little bit less, which I think in one form or another. I mean, look, there's not that far to go for at least a half a dozen states as it is now, where they have such a restrictive abortion laws. But things like trap laws, where you require onerous licensing and issues like that, these are what you're going to see first. And there's going to be a series of cases. The day whoever this white man becomes the next Supreme Court justice, and I'm going to bet it's probably going to be a white man.
Yeah, I know North Dakota has one. I mean, this might have gotten better. I doubt it. But North Dakota has one clinic, and it's in Fargo, and they'll find a way to restrict that.
Absolutely.
And I would not be surprised if they also passed a law to make it illegal to cross state lines to get an abortion.
You know, that's what I have been asking people, if there's going to be a way of doing that. And supposedly it would be extremely difficult to pass such a law. But that was the first thing that occurred to me. If there could be a federal statute to that effect. But that seems difficult. But listen, they could pass the law in these states, and maybe they wouldn't be challenged, or they would just be on the books. It'd be one of those laws that don't get enforced. But who knows? Who knows where we'll be in a year from now in that regard? But
they probably know they don't need to, because the economic barriers are so great already.
That's right. That's the whole point. And
now there will be the fucking revolution.
There you go. And then the revolution comes.